Yes, I think the learning is no, you always have to go with data. I believe that data truly has a power to tell stories. And if it's telling you something, it's a trend, pick it up, use it. But also use other nuances. I think I was very early on in my career where I believe that whatever the model tells me, whatever data tells me, is the ultimate truth. I think businesses are more gray than that. It's not just a math problem that we're solving. We have to understand what the brand is trying to sell. What is the company philosophy? What is the mission of the company? And we have to make sure that all our recommendations are actually in line with business goals as well.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Bots and Thoughts, the hyper-automation podcast sponsored by Salient Process. I'm your host, Jimmy Hewitt, aka Mr. Automation. Hello, bots and thoughters. The team and I at Salient Process are thrilled to bring you a special new guest from the 2023 Opex conference in Orlando this year. Nikita Surya is Uber's Senior Manager of Strategy Operations, overseeing the operational excellence of Uber's white label retail delivery service called UberDirect. From using data to inform process performance and presenting improvements and optimizations in the context of company cultures and values, to what skills, certifications, and mindsets that she recommends are must-acquires for 2024. I am thrilled to bring you Nikita Surya at Uber.
Well, I am curious before we dive right in, how long you've been in New York.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up, and how'd you get to New York?
Yeah, so I've actually I've been in New York for now 6 years. Been a while, and I've actually grown up in India. I've born and raised in Bombay, my favorite city in the world. Raised there, studied there, lived there till I was like 25, and moved to the US at the age of 26 to do my master's here at Columbia.
So, and what was your master's in?
So my master's in Columbia was actually in operations research and focusing on like machine learning, predictive analytics, and data. And that was actually my second master's from here.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah.
Take a little step back for me. Your undergrad degree was chemical engineering.
Yep. Yes.
There's the story in there. How do we go from chemical engineering to what you do now, which is senior manager strategy ops at Uber?
Yes, very interesting. Actually, it's been a long time, and I started out. As a child, I loved science. I've always been like a super curious child. Really enjoyed science, physics, and math. Like those were like my three favorite topics, which probably most people would not agree with. But that was me. I was like really enjoying it. Always wanted to get more into like scientific stuff and like be more design and creative in those sort of fields. And I think after I completed high school, I got into chemical engineering because, it's actually a field that's very focused on like physics, on modeling, on data, and getting into that, studied that a bit and really enjoyed it. I think those 4 years were super interesting and, has given me that foundation of like math and calculus that is very strongly required for everything that I do even today. So it started out from there. I went ahead after doing my engineering. I also did a master's in finance, because I realized that just knowing the technical skill set will not really help me in the business world. Like I want to be able to talk numbers and understand how like business works too. So got into that, spent some time with consulting. So worked with Ernst & Young for like 3 years or so, worked in financial and actually worked on operational risk. So that's where my journey with like, operational excellence kind of started. Spent some time like assessing financial risks from like the operational perspective. So worked with a few like private equity banks, some of the bigger banks in India. And then as I went through that, I realized I love consulting, like great exposure, but at the same time, I wanted to get more deeper. And like, I think my engineering roots were like, I need to be more data focused. And that was like, I need to be like in the data and in the weeds. And that's where, I was like, okay, I need to get a little deeper. And, the opportunity I got, like, the opportunity to come to Columbia and study like at one of the most prestigious schools and one of the most prestigious programs, which was like demand and supply analytics, predictive modeling. So, so I was like, okay, let's merge this. And whether it seems like actually my chemical engineering foundation played such a strong role for me getting into like Columbia and like getting into the master's degree, because it was all based on like the math and the foundation that I had and understanding data, but then knowing how to build the story around it. How do you optimize that data? How do you actually like design things with it? So that's how, Columbia happened. From there, so now I have this data degree and I have some financial exposure as well. And that I started out my first job with a sports company I love, that was Adidas.
Yep.
So got into the data science, like as things always happen when you study machine learning and predictive modeling, data science was like the it's still the hot word. I think 5 years ago, it was even like so I started out as a data scientist in Adidas, worked on all things supply chain, optimization of models. So again, worked on like network planning. So if you're in New York and you're ordering a shoe for yourself, how do we fulfill that? Not from the West Coast, but from a store in New York, like the flagship store, which could have it. So how do you make sure that you get it like super quickly? So optimizing that entire network route was like stuff that I worked on. So building models that could help like, bring efficiencies to the process and start removing like, you're optimizing for cost, for time, all of those things. So spent some time doing that in Adidas and then moved to Estee Lauder, which actually got me back to New York. So Adidas was actually in Portland on the West Coast. So spent some time there and then moved back to New York, realized, New York is my second love after Bombay, and came to Estee Lauder, which was, again, in the space of, so that role was strategic finance, so more into like business transformation and, more focused on process excellence. So less supply chain, but it was supply chain finance.
Okay.
So it looked at like entire value chain. So looked from like R&D to manufacturing to then making sure distribution. So how do you optimize for like projects around the entire scope? So like from a transformation lens, look at like how do we optimize, there's a lot of redundancies across these processes, and Estee Lauder companies, 31 companies rolled into one. So at a global level, there are 31 brands. How do you make sure there's synergy across like manufacturing, across value, across distribution? How do you make sure that they're not cannibalizing into each other? So those kind of like flagship projects are what I worked on from a financial perspective and supply chain. So super interesting stuff. Okay. I think a lot of work with like, doing like multiple projects. It was like they're in-house consultants. So working on Mac for like a few months and then Joe Malone for a few months and Tom Ford for a few months. So like a lot of interesting learnings across the board. Definitely. And like a lot of work in like transformation space and strategy space. And then from there, the opportunity for Uber finally came along, which is like where I'm currently working. So I've been 2 years at Uber. Which was, when I interviewed for Uber, it was like, this is a startup within a established space. So the role I am in Uber is actually, it's a white label service and it's last mile delivery. So it's a completely new line of business within Uber. So, it's like you have to set it up. So basically from retail to grocery, when you go to an Apple website or you go to a grocery website and you order groceries, it's actually delivered through Uber. And you as a customer probably know, probably don't know it.
I have no idea.
Yeah, and end-to-end it gets serviced through the same Uber platform. So it's a completely new business.
Does it plug in with like a Grubhub or?
No, so it's a competitor.
Oh, okay.
So no, Grubhub's a competitor. I'll not easily.
You order on Uber Eats?
No, you order on an apple.com. And you say you want an iPhone in 2 hours. And you select the 2-hour delivery option. And that comes through Uber.
Okay.
Or you go to Sephora and you're like, I need this lipstick by tonight because I'm going for a Taylor Swift concert and I need this.
Yeah, that's
great. It comes to you through Uber.
That's great.
So this is a completely new business, and I think it was just an opportunity to like be in a disruptive space and do something completely new and use all this, have like a data background to be able to use data in like a way to actually build an entire business. So it's been 2 years, but not a single day has been boring until now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You have a really unique and super logical. You probably didn't plan it out to be that way, but the steps really complement each other.
Yeah.
Chemical engineering gave you the data, the analysis, the maths behind what then turned into supply chain optimization, solving complex logistical problems at several retailers. The financial side of it makes sense with the numbers, and your strength in numbers, and all of that kind of coming together into the transportation company that we all know as Uber.
Yeah.
Great background.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like when I think back, I'm like, okay, it actually ties in because there's so many things I do now, and I'm like, oh, there's actually experiences that I can pick up from.
Using all of it.
Yeah, using it all throughout the journey, and like there were definitely points where I was like, chemical engineering, how does that tie into like what I'm going to do next? Yeah. But now when I look back, and I'm like, it made sense.
So I'm curious, what does your day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year look like as senior manager, strategy ops at this startup within Uber?
Yeah.
Curious what your team looks like. Are they all similar to you and your background and skill set, or is it more diverse? What about the teams you indirectly work with? Describe that for us.
Yeah, so Uber is, it's a tech company through and through. It's also a transportation company. So we touch a lot of different facets. Mm-hmm. And the line of business I work in is UberDirect, which is the last mile delivery option. Mm-hmm. And I focus primarily on reliability and risk. So from a delivery experience perspective, so from the point a customer places the order, my team is in charge of making sure that the end-to-end, like the customer receives that order in full and on time. So our biggest metrics are those, right? So that the trip is completed. You want the iPhone to come to you in 2 hours as promised, and you want the iPhone to be there. Yes. So that's like the primary metric. For us, I have a team of 6 right now. So when I started out 2 years ago, I was only one person who joined the team. So been involved with hiring, coaching, mentoring our entire team, which is a mix of like analysts, senior analysts on the team. Most of them
financial analysts.
No, these are mostly data and strategy analysts. So primarily, I would say most of like everyone on my team, given that this is like an entire delivery and it is a tech heavy role, everyone does have tech background, and they do have the skills to be working on SQL, working on like complex data very primarily. Because I would say 50-60% of our time is spent in SQL and like with data and like running analysis, then working through it.
I'm curious, what's your take on process mining?
What do you mean by like process mining specifically?
I can catch you up more about that maybe after the podcast. Yeah. But in short, it is a platform that goes back to, I want to say the early 2010s, but only recently gained popularity in the last year or 2, maybe 3. It's coming out of its kind of early adopter phase into widespread use to help folks in continuous improvement, operational excellence, even line of business leaders responsible for, understanding and solving process related problems. But what's different about it is the process map output comes from your data, your system data, as opposed to traditional process mapping, not mining, but mapping comes from anecdata, right? You sit down with someone and say, hey, how does this process work? And you use your squares and triangles to understand the process flow, swim lanes, milestones, work time, wait time systems, race, SciPoc, stuff like that. That's an automated output from process mining.
I would say, that's not something we've used, at least at Uber. And the reason I think is we're so new in this space, and this is a completely transformative space. Nobody's done. We're literally learning on the fly. Like I think every day at Uber has been like a learning experience for us. So we're like learning, and so there's really no history to like build processes off of. We're literally.
You need a big amount of data.
Yeah, like I think we're at that point now where we started documentation process mapping now for our processes, because we're like, okay, we've been doing this for like 6 months. Let's say now we know how to do this. But I do think that a lot of Uber and the way we work at Uber is like innovative. It's like, let's do new things. Let's not stick to a standard process or something that somebody's told us can work. I think that's one of the fundamentals for us. It's like, let's build something new if you have an idea. And I think the good thing is like, even for us day to day, anybody in the teams can actually be like, no, I don't think this is how we should do it. And, that decision, whether it's like, it doesn't matter what your level is, what your designation is. If like the analyst on our team says, we don't think the data is worth it, let's not do this, we will explore a different option. We do a lot of A/B testing, a lot of like experimentation. So we're more of that mode where we're like constantly testing and trying, rather than like actually relying on like a set process right now.
You're in the lab.
We're literally in the lab. Like
you're a scientist.
This is literally like our day to day is like, so our team focuses on like reliability and making sure we work with partners. So work very closely with account managers. We're like the face of Uber tech to the merchants. So if you're working with an Apple, like I work on these partnerships like daily, like from an Albertsons perspective, Sephora, like, we're working with them, trying to understand how their tech systems work. So how, because I think, what some companies don't realize is there is also some tech lift that is needed from their perspective. Like, we just can't have a new, like a small grocery be like, oh, we want to give them that functionality that today we want to turn on Uber as a delivery service. And just be like, okay, you're taken care of and you're delivered. But there is obviously some tech work that is needed on their end to be able to like integrate with our API and things like that. So how do we work with them? How do we make sure they have the right resources? So we work with the engineering team to enable that for our partners. And then on the other side, we also work very closely with our product team, who's the internal product team, who is working on all product. And we're like, oh, hey, we need to prioritize a certain feature for RX deliveries. And the product, so there's this constant game of prioritization where like, what's really important? What moves the needle? What is the company's directive towards? Like, what is our growth focus towards? And then we work with the product team to make sure those kind of features can be actually built out and rolled out.
Yeah. A little bit of a left-hand turn here, but how does the cost work? Is it free to the consumer? Does Apple pick up the bill? Is it a shared cost across parties? Are surge prices involved? Does it fluctuate? I'm curious, how does the...
so I can give you some more context on that. So I think my team...
I would pay extra to have a MacBook in an hour.
In 2 hours, right. So I think my team also handles it. We own the cost per trip and there's, we own a portion of the P&L which is related to cost. But I think we have contractual pricing with our merchants because we are like a last mile delivery. It's not happening through Uber Eats. So it's a very different pricing algorithm. I think we have contractual pricing.
Is it still your just everyday Uber drivers that would take us to dinner?
It is the same.
The same drivers. They get a ride request from the Apple Store to your home.
So it's the same drivers who do delivery, who do Uber Eats, who do Uber rides. So it's the same thing.
Cool.
If they've, it would be the rides if they've like actually signed in to like, if they've opted in to do Eats deliveries. But yes, similar people.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Like it's additional income. Right. It's additional income throughout the days. So it's so the pricing, there is no surge right now through Direct because this is like contractual. So we charge the merchants a specific contractual fee for like the delivery and the return service. So if there's like a return associated with the product, like if you're not at home for an iPhone to take the delivery, we would have to return it back to the store. So there is like a return component of it as well. However, we don't influence what the merchant would then charge on their website to the customers. So
they have a rate that they pay you. But what they charge me
could be different.
Up to them.
It's up to them. It's up to their algorithm. If they charge, do they want to offer it free? Like we know could be a promotion. So that is completely up to the merchant's discretion in this case.
It seems like a premium feature for the, how do we say, consumers are very, what's the word? Demanding.
I think the needs are changing now, right? Like, like grocery, you want it in 30 minutes now. Like, I think,
what if we come to?
Like there is just like, grocery for us has been like, convenience is growing. Like 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven. So 7-Eleven has like, we deliver in 30 minutes on average. So that's just the convenience of it. And you could choose to get it in 4 days through like, the other modes of, delivery out there. But this is an add-on delivery feature.
Very cool.
And we're seeing this grow very quickly, like over the last few years.
I have a feeling that your team is going to crush it.
We hope so.
I'm curious. You probably have several projects going on at any point in time. Right? How many ongoing projects are in your portfolio? Is it 5 for 50? Or...
Right now, it's in the range of like, I think what we're trying to do is get more strategic about like how we split our bandwidth. So I think we try to be like about like 5 long-term projects, and long-term in Uber terms is like more a half year.
Sure.
So
long term.
Like, we're saying like, oh, we're
it's
not
like a decade in tech.
Okay, like, we're talking about like 6 months. What do we want to achieve? So like, what are our big rocks for like 6 months? We try to divide those priorities. So those would be about like 5 or like, so each person on the team would have like 2 major projects that they're working on, which are like over 6 months or so, which we will reassess like, monthly and look at like whether that still makes sense. Is it still a business need? Because things change so quickly for us. And then we have like short-term projects, which are like monthly or like bi-monthly, where like, if you have Q4 for us, an example, is like really big for us with retail. So there's like big Walmart events, big Apple events that are coming in, and that is something we plan for. And these are smaller projects. So something like this would be in the tune, like sprints would be in the tune of about like, I would say 50 to 20 across the team for sure.
Sure.
So
So prioritizing those, managing those, it'd be great if we could do everything all at once, but
but
your physics background knows that we can't. So how do you prioritize those?
I think I would say it's still a work in progress. It's not something that, we've championed over time. And, but I would say ruthless prioritization is key. And I think that's something we apply across the entire company. Like whether it's our product team, it's our account managers, it's, the strategy ops, the startups team, all of us, we have a very clear business impact allocated with each prioritization. And that's how we're like, okay, what's the business impact? What is this going to drive? What's going to move the needle? And is this in line with what we actually want to do with Uber as a company? So
a lot of North Stars, is that a term we use?
A lot of we use big rocks.
Big rocks, okay.
Sure. Big rocks is like a very term.
Okay.
So,
is that the rock and then the pebble? And the sand
Big rocks. So if it's in direction with what and then we do a lot of like scorecards also to see like whether things are moving in the right direction or not. But I would say that prioritization has been key for us, like especially as we manage like bandwidth, and everything's always urgent. And in the world, especially in this world where we're working with merchants, so this is like very partnership based. A lot of our like growth also depends on how like partnerships are performing. So it's like
very very dynamic.
It could change.
Up, down, right, left, internal, external,
everything. So I think a lot of it is like also a function of where we think the merchant, like what's the potential with the partnership as well.
Sure.
Like what's the growth. So that's where we have like our account management and our commercial teams also very closely looped in to like what can be prioritized versus not.
I'm curious, what's your favorite big rock of late, either ongoing or previous, or a monthly one? I'm curious what's the story that comes to mind of before, of what you do, and then after outcome.
I think a really good one that we've worked through, and I think the last 8 months of my life has been around defect rate.
Defect rate.
Yes, I think.
How do you define it?
Yeah, so I think it just means that when the delivery was completed in full or not. So was there an item missing or there a product missing? And I think after the pandemic, this is an issue that most retailers are facing. Like, I think that's an issue, especially in terms of like fraudulent deliveries, fraudulent trips, so that's been an issue.
Okay.
And especially, we're also seeing that happen on delivery and on the Uber side, because for us, like our drivers and our couriers are our partners. They're not our full-time employees. Right. They are gig workers. They're on the platform for a while. They're not on the platform. They could be on and off. But one of the issues that, and then we're delivering really high-value products such as Apple or MacBooks or like even high luxury items through the platform. So we want to make sure that item is actually not stolen on the way, or there's no like component of fraud associated with it, or like so that's something that's been was top of mind for us for a long time.
So before we get into kind of anything else, the analysis and the resolution, let's spend another beat on defining the problem. You mentioned completeness and there. And I'm sorry, I took a note here. And on time. Completeness and on time. I was speaking with someone earlier at the conference, and the thing that is kind of coming to mind for me is if you had an hour to solve a problem, you had 8 months, but if you had an hour to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes defining it. And then 5 solving it. So help us spend not 55 minutes, but help us define this problem.
A little more. Okay, so sounds good. So I think just when we talk about completion, right? So that means if you order 2 iPhones, 1 MacBook, you need to receive 2 iPhones, 1 MacBook. Simple example. right? And what we started noticing sometime last year is, we started seeing some theft happen across the platform. Where it's like if a customer ordered for 2 iPhones, didn't receive both of them or received like part of them.
Apple gave it,
but they didn't get it. So for us, the problem statement was, there is this, and Uber is liable to pay the entire amount, like refund back to Apple.
That's a tough one.
So it's a big impact, right? And the average basket value for Apple is very close to $1,000, like somewhere in that ballpark, right? So it's a big hit on the P&L as well. So the problem statement was literally like, okay, we are seeing the actual impact to our P&L go up. We are seeing refunds go up. There is a problem. Something needs to happen. It was a trend. Okay. We're seeing that go up. We're turning in the wrong direction. And that's where, my team and I and my manager were pulled in that, hey, this is a problem. Please fix it.
Okay.
So we were given this one-line statement. And that's from where we started. So we started...
Sounds like we're more focused on completeness, not necessarily on time.
Because
cheaper problem.
No, I think yes, there is on time is a bigger problem. I would say more for food, because you want to make sure that food is for perishables. But for retail, completeness, and also because completeness and theft is something you want to solve on the platform. On time is something that can be fixed. Like, it's not a loophole in the system. It could be a function of supply. It could be a function of the courier not being around you, like the driver just taking time.
Yeah, less responsibility for Uber. On time.
On the P&L side. Also.
For sure.
Yeah, so more on the completeness. So this was like one of the bigger issues that actually came up last year. And we started investigating into it. It was, so that's when we started defining it, like, is it actually a completeness problem or So before solving it, I think understanding the problem, I would definitely say we need to spend out of 1 hour, spend 30 minutes on trying to understand what exactly is going on.
And understanding helps you further define.
Yeah.
You can go back and forth time and time again between defining and understanding. Okay, we didn't know that. We can define it even further and understand more and so forth.
So I think understanding that is very critical, especially in a new business and in a place where, you don't have established protocols.
Yeah, it almost feels like a waterfall or a linear approach, thinking that it's not a back and forth between defining and understanding.
There's a constant loop. It's a loop. And I think as you get more stakeholders involved, you're going to learn more. And it's going to be like a can of worms that you open out.
Great.
So I think that's something that we spend a good amount of time on, but also, and in Uber world, this entire thing had to be solved yesterday. So I always say to Uber, we have to solve all problems yesterday. So we looked through it. So I think having a very systematic approach to where the issues were happening, was there what was the gap that was happening? And, there's also, at the end of the day, very honestly, theft is a he said, she said scenario, right? I don't have CCTV footage. I'm not on the ground. I don't know.
A lot of Ubers do.
Yeah.
Ubers have cameras.
Yeah, but not just
safety.
Yeah, but not in the store or the person,
points of connection.
Yeah, the points of handshake, when I'm handing it over to you. There's no live feed. I don't know at the end of the day.
You don't.
So we try to identify what were the biggest issues. So we, usually in delivery, we think about it in different legs. There's a pickup leg. Then there is once you've completed pickup, once the driver swipes complete pickup, then there's when he's on the route to drop off. And then once he's actually in the geofence and he's in the drop off vicinity, then he has to meet the customer. He or she has to meet the customer in complete drop off. Yes. So we define these 3 stages.
3 milestones.
And we try to look at
process emerging.
Yeah. So that's what the process actually starts building out.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Do we have
swim lanes? Merchant, driver,
customer. Then we start getting stakeholders. Okay, at pickup, what's the product team doing? What can the account managers confirm with the partners? What have we been doing?
Any swim lanes?
What is the support agent doing? When the driver is calling the support and saying, I have an issue, what's the support agent doing? And then there is a legal team, which is
8, 10 swim lanes.
It was a massive project. It was a huge undertaking.
It's not that simple. Never is.
It never is. A complicated one, but I think 6 months later, we were able to understand, evaluate. I think in 2 months, we had few weeks we had a clear understanding of where the gaps were.
Yeah. What was an aha moment that comes to mind?
So this was a very big aha moment I actually felt was when you walk into the Apple store and all of their products are just kept on a table at the entrance, near the store, unmanned, and you could just literally pick up a piece of AirPods and walk out. There's no RFID, there's no barcode, nothing beeps. there is nothing. And I kind of uncovered this while like actually going to the store as a customer and like reviewing the way the operations were working. And actually went in, saw this, took a few pictures, took a video, and then actually shared it with like Apple's logistics team.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys, like, we can solve for only some part of the problem, but you guys also need to like, we need to have shared ownership of this.
Yeah.
And I think that was just like the first point where it was just like, okay. And, I think we didn't even know about this gap that existed before this. But
did they? How did they respond?
I mean, they also didn't know much. I think the way we respond, like we try to put some more ownership because this is obviously high value items. We also need like ownership from the merchants. I think defining like shared ownership and like making sure there are some things that only the store can enforce, right? Like we can't be doing those things. So they started doing some of those things. Apple also enabled like a Jiffy packaging, so like a brown bag package. Because if you see how Apple delivers its products, it's literally in a bag.
Yeah,
just
white Apple bag.
It's just open. Yeah, and it's open to theft. Even like we've had so many instances where like couriers would actually call us in and be like, I'm on a bike because New York is 70% bikes. Sure. And he's like, I'm on a bike and I have like 2 iPhones with me and I'm actually scared for my own safety.
Wow.
So, because, it's anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
And so we have these issues too. So it's not always like, a person's fault. There are multiple things at play here. So working through all of those things, Apple also did a few improvements of their own. They started like Jiffy packaging where like they started doing some brown bag packaging for like some of the smaller products like the AirPods and things like that. We made a lot of changes internally to our product flow, to the delivery experience, to the, we worked a lot with our risk team to define like courier profiles and like understand who are like better quality couriers, like, tenure of couriers, things like that. And actually went through and then, like worked to solve the problem.
A lot of fun experiments.
A lot of experiments, a lot of different testings.
So these are all really positive experiences. And I want to ask about maybe a bump, a bruise, a speed bump, a lesson learned that we can make a positive because we're continuous improvement people and we like to learn from information. And I know the audience would really benefit if you could maybe think of a not so happy outcome, maybe a project took longer to deliver. So maybe give your team more time from a forecasting perspective. I don't want to lead the witness, but what's a lesson learned that you've learned a lot from, or your team has learned a lot from, that maybe our audience can too?
I think a lot of it is one project that actually comes to mind is a project that I did at Estee Lauder. And like I said, we worked with a lot of different companies. And, like I was working in corporate and driving these transformation projects. So for me, every product was just a SKU on an Excel sheet, right? And the benefit it drove was like, those clear numbers. This is the cost, this is the value that you're driving from it. Does it work? Does it not work? And we were doing this entire analysis for Jo Malone, where it was like, okay, Jo Malone is a fragrance brand and it's part of the Estee Lauder portfolio. So, it's one of the premium luxury fragrances in the market. And they have a huge inventory of like different types of fragrances they make. And they have very unique fragrances that they work on. So because of that, and because it's unique, it's not like your standard scents. They have a huge SKU portfolio. And, we did an entire SKU portfolio analysis for them. And we found out that they had a lot of, the long tail SKUs that were really not performing that well. And we didn't think it made sense for them to continue with this long lineup. And, they shouldn't be moving forward with it. So we felt that was like, they were actually negative and the cost to company was pretty high and it was actually not benefiting much. So I put together this portfolio proposal of like, if we eliminated the bottom 30%, that would mean X revenue and like less load on the supply chain, like all those good things, like improve efficiencies for the process. Went and, my boss was always
learning. Sounds so logical.
We went and presented that to the board president of like Jo Malone. We're like, hey, you don't need to be doing this. And from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense.
Still so logical.
But then, it kind of was completely against the brand philosophy. And I kind of, I think I'm such a data and analytics focused person. I I probably didn't think much about like the brand philosophy and creative that we're catering to all types of audiences.
So I cut you off. Continue.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Was the learning to not make recommendations like that, or to make them in the context of?
Yes, I think the learning is, no, you always have to go with data. I believe that data truly has a power to tell stories. And if it's telling you something, it's a trend, pick it up, use it. But also use other nuances. I think I was very early on in my career where I believe that whatever the model tells me, whatever data tells me is the ultimate truth. I think businesses are more gray than that. It's not just a math problem that we're solving. We have to understand what the brand is trying to sell. What is the company philosophy? What is the mission of the company? And we have to make sure that all our recommendations are actually in line with business goals as well. And that's been a learning for me.
Business goals and culture values.
And culture values.
Yes.
I think that,
great nugget.
Yeah, like I think from like a data lens, you're like, yeah, data's there, you know. Let's
Not everyone's the scientist.
Yeah. So I think that's
especially
really important. So that was good, and it's really helped me now. Because it's like, okay, you didn't do it well now, but now when you like think about like the other nuances at play.
I bet your proposals have gotten so much better received.
Now, yes. Now at least like I think presenting different points of view, even while, giving a recommendation, it helps the other entities also realize that you're not there just to like show that, oh, you've done the work and this is your proposal. I think it's to think that you've thought through 2 or 3 different steps already. And that is always more well received than like just going in with like, do it because it's supposed to help you.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Rapid fire question time. I am curious if there was a certification or a skill set, be it hard or soft, that you would recommend the, say, next generation of continuous improvement professionals to go pick up. What would that be in line?
I would say everyone should invest in understanding the latest tools, like to work with data. I think it's going to be a requirement for everyone, especially in the field of like continuous improvement. Like the word itself means adapting, changing, and moving on to technology. Whether it's doing a LinkedIn learning course, like a very simple course online, or it means doing actually professional degree, doesn't matter. But make sure you can, because I think the next generation of work we're already so immersed in data, but it's only going to get more. And, with like ChatGPT coming in and all these other ways, if you're able to work with data and able to work through, just the basic analysis, like a 5-step proposal, that'll take you a long way than just being someone who's not working through data.
That's great. Last question would be if there's not a certification, but maybe a mindset that you would give to the same audience, maybe to your team or to a mentee.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're working with mentees. What's a mindset that's going to serve continuous improvement professionals well?
Be very receptive to change. I think being very adaptive is key. Like sometimes we have set processes that we've been doing for the last, so many years, but the world is changing so rapidly that the speed of change and the turnover is also changing quickly. Like I said, at Uber, we're working on so many projects at the same time and things change very quickly. And I'm seeing that that's the direction most companies are going. So we have to be very nimble, very flexible to change. You cannot be set in your processes and like be open to listening to other perspectives. Mm-hmm. I think being open to like learning about new things, like that's something I'm trying to keep myself accountable to as well. Like when I meet like new younger team members, the Gen Zs now,
yes,
and they have sometimes they have a completely different perspective, but it actually is more efficient to do it their way. And I think it's just keeping an open mind.
That's great. Last question for the technical folks in our audience, and you can tap out on this one if you'd like. I'm curious, what does your intersection with IT look like? Do you work with them on the defining and the discovery phase? IT owns data, right? Do they give you access to the data? Do they ETL you? Yeah. Do they send you packages of data on the design, define and discovery, and the solution? Do you work with them on integrations or automations or workflows or case management? I'm curious, what does your team's relationship with IT look like?
I think in Uber, I will be very honest, we have a very close relationship. Like we have access to all of the data we need from an IT perspective, which is very different from like the other companies that I've worked with.
Yeah.
So this has been a very different experience for me, where it's like we own, like, once we get access to like certain data that we've asked for, then we can do whatever ETL we need to do, set up automations. We have an automations team that helps us, like, even automations is done within ops. So we can run all of these processes end to end. I think the good thing about Uber is a lot of ownership is with us. So we're not relying so much in terms of like permissions.
Sure. It sounds like IT deserves a round of applause for empowering.
Definitely. For sure. I think in our case, like we all feel very empowered with the data we have. Sometimes it's a little too much data, so we don't know what to stop.
Interesting coming from the scientist.
Yeah, I think it's like too much. Like sometimes you just want like streamlined tables. Don't give us all the tables.
The raw data.
Yeah. But I would say, like in previous companies that I did work with, the relationship was like, we did have to struggle a lot more to get access to the data set. And I think that is something I know a lot of companies are working through in the transformation space as well.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Congratulations on your fabulous career.
Thank you.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Your team and your big rocks.
Yep.
Moving forward. And I'll be looking out for you all online.
Yep.
Although I won't see Uber brand when I check out.
You will see powered by Uber. So
I will see powered by Uber.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
They may not, but you will see powered by Uber.
I'll be looking out for
it. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Jimmy. It was such a pleasure to be here. I had so much fun.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Bots and Thoughts, the hyperautomation podcast sponsored by Salient Process. Be sure to never miss an episode by hitting that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this. Don't forget to connect and interact with us. You can find us on Bots and Thoughts' own LinkedIn page. And we're constantly running feedback surveys and ask that if you've made it this far in the episode, show us some love by responding to a survey and following us on LinkedIn. Finally, if you or someone you know would like to be a special guest on the show, we have a nomination form also down in the description for you to fill out. And with that, see you next episode and happy automating.